Stop drinking water first thing in the morning unless you do this one thing. You woke up today, walked to the kitchen, and reached for a glass of water. Good intention, wrong execution. And the difference between those two is not a matter of preference. It is a physiological sequence that determines whether that water protects your cardiovascular system or bypasses the mechanism entirely and does almost nothing. Most people who drink water first thing in the morning are doing it incorrectly. Not the wrong amount, not the wrong temperature, the wrong biological context. And the context is everything, because at 6 a.m., your body is not the same body it was at 10 a.m. Your blood is different. Your vessels are different. The organs processing that water are running a completely different program, and no one has told you what program is running at the exact moment you reach for that glass. This is not about hydration. Hydration is the outcome. This is about the mechanism, the hour, the sequence, and the one thing that determines whether your first glass of water works the way your body needs it to, or whether it passes through a system that was never prepared to receive it correctly. At 6 a.m., you haven't consumed fluid for 7 to 8 hours. During those hours, your body wasn't resting. It was working. Respiration alone exhales water vapor with every breath across 8 hours of sleep. Your skin loses fluid continuously regardless of temperature. Your kidneys have been concentrating urine all night, pulling water out of circulation to process the metabolic waste that overnight repair programs generate. By the time your alarm sounds, your plasma volume has dropped 5 to 8%. That is not a trivial shift. Plasma is the liquid component of your blood. When plasma volume drops, blood viscosity rises. Your blood thickens. Fibrinogen concentration elevates. Platelet aggregability increases. The blood at 6 a.m. is measurably more prone to clotting than the blood at noon. Research published in the New England Journal of Medicine documented that the window between 6 a.m. and noon is when heart attacks and strokes peak in every population ever studied. Your blood is at its thickest and most thrombogenic at the exact hour that window opens. This is not coincidence. This is the mechanism. The risk is highest when the blood is thickest. The blood is thickest when plasma volume is lowest. Plasma volume is lowest immediately after waking. You are reaching for water at the most physiologically important moment of your entire day. The question is whether you are doing it in a way that actually addresses what your body needs at that hour. Here is where most people get it wrong. They wake up, walk to the kitchen, drink water, then reach for their phone, then start coffee. The water does something, but it does not do what it could do if the sequence were correct, because the sequence determines the biological environment the water lands on. And the biological environment at 6 a.m. has two competing systems running simultaneously that most people do not know exist. The order of your first 10 minutes either supports or disrupts them, 400 to 500 milliliters. That is the volume. Before coffee, before food, before your phone. Your plasma dilutes within 15 to 20 minutes. Viscosity drops. The blood that was running thick and thrombogenic begins normalizing at the exact hour the cardiac risk window opens. One glass of water consumed before anything else is not a wellness habit. It is a dilution event delivered to a cardiovascular system operating at its highest daily clotting risk. The timing is not aesthetic. The timing is the mechanism. But here is what the water also does that almost nobody explains. The gastrocolic reflex. When your stomach receives a fluid load, gastric distension signals your colon to begin motility. Your colon moves. The morning bowel movement that millions of people try to force with caffeine is actually a mechanical response to gastric volume that water triggers before coffee ever reaches your system. Caffeine produces the same result through a completely different and more stressful pathway. Cortisol amplification. Cardiac demand on a system still running thick blood. Water produces the bowel movement through a mechanical reflex. Coffee produces it through a hormonal cascade that lands on a cardiovascular system that has not yet normalized its viscosity. Water does what coffee is trying to do without the cost, without the cardiac load, without landing stimulants on blood that is still at its thickest. This is why the unless matters. Drinking water first thing in the morning is correct, but drinking it after your phone is wrong. Drinking it after coffee is wrong. Drinking it in the wrong volume is wrong. And drinking it without understanding what your body actually needs from that water at that specific hour means the habit exists, but the mechanism does not activate. You are going through the motion without triggering the biology. The motion was designed to trigger. Now 5 minutes later, the water is inside your system. The clock is still running, and what happens in the first 5 minutes of movement after waking is more physiologically dense than what happens in the next 30. Synovial fluid in every joint gelled overnight. The thixotropic property that applies to every joint capsule means fluid that is designed to be liquid under shear force becomes viscous under stillness. 7 hours of stillness. Every joint in your body woke up running on fluid that has been sitting without mechanical input across the entire overnight period. Morning stiffness is not age. Morning stiffness is lubricant gelled overnight that thins under shear force. The first 6 steps apply that shear force. By 60 seconds, your knees and hips are moving freely, not because they warmed up, because the fluid returned to its functional viscosity under mechanical loading. The cartilage that receives zero nutrient delivery during sleep begins receiving fresh synovial fluid through the compression-release pumping of each step. Cartilage has no blood supply. It receives nutrients entirely through the compression and release cycle that movement produces. Every step is a pump. Every pump delivers nutrition that 8 hours of stillness withheld. Capillaries in your leg muscles that were collapsed during sleep. 75 to 80% of the capillary network closed during overnight stillness, receiving no flow, open within 2 to 3 minutes of walking as working muscles produce local vasodilators. The perfusion surface area triples. The sluggishness that felt like not being a morning person was partial ischemia, tissue receiving a fraction of its blood supply. 3 minutes of walking opens the vessels. 10 minutes captures the full transition cascade, synovial thinning, capillary recruitment, venous pump activation, lymphatic flow initiation, and something else begins at minute 4. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the molecular signal that researchers at the University of Pittsburgh documented produces measurable volume increase in the hippocampus. The brain structure that consolidates memory begins with the molecular cascade that each morning walk initiates. Your brain is physically growing in response to movement, not metaphorically, measurably. Tissue volume increases. And it begins at minute 4 of the walk that the water at 6 a.m. made physiologically safer by already beginning to normalize the blood, that those first steps are now circulating through every vessel. The capillary recruitment just opened. This is the sequence. Water dilutes the blood. Movement opens the vessels. The blood that flows through those vessels is less thrombogenic than it was 15 minutes ago, because the water arrived first. The sequence is not a routine. It is a physiological chain reaction where each step changes the environment the next step lands on. Arms swing freely, head over shoulders, ears aligned, chin parallel to the ground, eyes on the horizon. The torsional cancellation that free arm swing provides reduces lumbar rotational loading by 60% per step. Your cervical spine carries 5 kilograms in neutral alignment. It carries 20 to 27 kilograms. When your head tilts forward into the screen posture most people carry into their morning walk without noticing. The phone in your hand during your morning walk is the mechanism that converts a physiologically dense 10-minute investment into a degraded version of itself. Head forward, arm swing disrupted, torsional loading restored, capillary recruitment still happens, BDNF still begins, but the spinal loading that the walk was simultaneously correcting is reintroduced by the device the walk was supposed to provide a break from, now sunlight. The intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells in your eye contain melanopsin. These are not vision cells. They do not produce images. They signal directly to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, your brain's master circadian clock. The signal that morning light delivers to your suprachiasmatic nucleus resets every peripheral clock in your body simultaneously. Liver clock, pancreatic clock, adrenal clock, gut clock. Every organ running its own circadian program receives the synchronization signal through your eyes in the first exposure to outdoor light each morning. Without this signal, the clocks drift. And drifting clocks produce cascading mistiming across every system that runs on a schedule. Insulin sensitivity peaks at the wrong hour. Melatonin releases too late. Cortisol cycles lose precision. Core temperature rhythm shifts. None of these are dramatic in a single day. Across weeks, they compound into the fatigue, the disrupted sleep, the metabolic inefficiency that most people attribute to aging or stress, rather than to a synchronization signal that stopped arriving on time. 10 minutes of outdoor light. Even on an overcast day, outdoor illumination measures 10 to 50 times stronger than indoor lighting. The signal does not require direct sunlight. It requires outdoor light through unfiltered eyes. Glasses and contact lenses are acceptable. Windows are not. The glass filters the specific wavelengths the melanopsin receptors require. Your body cannot receive its primary daily synchronization signal through a window. This is why the morning walk is not just movement. It is the delivery mechanism for the circadian reset that every peripheral clock is waiting for. From the moment waking begins, the water opened the vessels. The movement opened the capillaries. The light set the clocks. 3 mechanisms, 10 minutes, simultaneous. The physics does not require sequencing what the body processes in parallel. Now 7 a.m. Breakfast. Because your pancreas has a clock and that clock peaks in the morning. Insulin sensitivity follows a circadian rhythm that is not a suggestion. It is a measurable biochemical reality that changes hour by hour. Pancreatic beta cells produce more insulin per glucose load in the morning than at any other point in the day. Muscle cells are more responsive to insulin in the morning. Glucose uptake per unit of insulin is higher. Hepatic glycogen storage capacity peaks in the morning hours. The identical meal consumed at 7 a.m. produces a lower glucose spike, a smaller insulin response, and more efficient glucose disposal than the same meal consumed at 9 p.m. The food is identical. The calories are identical. The macronutrient ratio is identical. Your body's capacity to process them is different because the pancreatic clock, the hepatic clock, and muscle insulin receptor sensitivity all peak in the morning and decline progressively through the day. Protein at breakfast specifically. The thermic effect of food is highest for protein. 20 to 30% of its caloric content burns during digestion itself. The amino acids provide the substrate for muscle protein synthesis that the overnight fasting period suppressed. The satiety signal per calorie is strongest for protein. Peptide Y and GLP-1 from your gut produce more sustained fullness from 100 calories of protein than from 100 calories of carbohydrate or fat. The breakfast that keeps hunger controlled until noon is not larger. It is higher in protein. The mechanism is hormonal, not volumetric. Coffee after water, not before, not simultaneously. Caffeine before water lands on a cardiovascular system still running thick blood. The cortisol amplification that caffeine produces through adenosine receptor blockade adds cardiac demand to a system that has not yet normalized its viscosity. Caffeine after water lands on a system where plasma has already begun diluting. Viscosity has already begun dropping. The cardiac demand that caffeine adds lands on biology that has already been partially corrected, rather than biology at its daily peak of thrombogenic risk. The sequence is not a preference. It is the difference between adding load to a compromised system and adding load to a system already moving toward recovery. Now 8 a.m. to noon, the desk hours. 4 hours of sitting produces 4 hours of cumulative mechanical damage across systems that require periodic movement to function. Synovial fluid requires shear force to maintain its liquid state. 4 hours of sitting without movement, and the fluid in every loaded joint begins trending back toward the viscosity. The morning walk spent 10 minutes reversing. Lymphatic flow requires muscular contraction to move. The lymphatic system has no pump. Muscle movement is the pump. 4 hours of stillness, and lymphatic drainage stagnates. Venous return from your lower extremities requires the calf muscle pump. Sitting compresses the popliteal vein behind your knee. 4 hours of this, and venous pooling begins accumulating in your legs that the morning walk cleared. Every 30 to 45 minutes, 90 seconds of intervention. Standing alone does not solve this. A standing desk replaces the hip flexion loading of sitting with the static compression loading of standing. It trades one mechanical problem for a different mechanical problem. The intervention is not the position. The intervention is the transition. The act of moving from one position to another loads your joints through a range, pumps synovial fluid, recruits postural muscles through a new pattern, and provides the shear force that the thixotropic fluid in every joint needs to maintain its functional viscosity. Sitting for 30 minutes, then standing briefly, then sitting again captures more mechanical benefit than standing for 4 hours continuously, because the transitions produce the loading events that static positions, whether seated or standing, cannot produce. 3 actions. 30 seconds each. Thoracic extension. Ears over shoulders. Sternum lifts. 5 deep breaths at full lung volume. The upper back that has been rounding into kyphosis straightens. The rib cage that has been compressing your diaphragm opens. Your diaphragm descends fully. At the diaphragmatic hiatus, your vagus nerve receives mechanical stimulation from the fully descending diaphragm. Parasympathetic tone that has been drifting sympathetically for 30 minutes of screen focus is restored through a mechanical pathway, not through intention, through anatomy distance viewing. 60 seconds. The furthest visible object, the ciliary muscle that has been locked in sustained contraction during close focus releases. The accommodation spasm that produces blurred distance vision when you finally look up resolves as the muscle relaxes fully. Convergence drops. Pupils dilate. Metabolic waste that accumulated during sustained near-focus flushes with restored blood flow to tissue that contraction had been partially compressing. 0.10 deliberate slow blinks. Full eyelid closure. Meibomian gland compression. Tear film refresh. The blink rate that dropped from 15 to 20 per minute to 4 to 6 during screen focus is manually compensated. The lipid layer that prevents tear evaporation is restored by meibomian gland expression. Each complete blink produces. Dry eyes during screen work are not a hydration problem. They are a blink rate problem. 10 slow blinks in 30 seconds restores the film that 30 minutes of screen focus progressively degraded. 90 seconds total. Every 30 to 45 minutes. The interventions are brief because the mechanisms they address accumulate slowly. 30 minutes of sitting does not produce permanent change. 30 minutes of sitting followed by 90 seconds of correction resets the accumulation. The damage is from uninterrupted sitting, not from sitting itself. 12:30 p.m. Walk after eating. Glucose peaks in your blood 30 to 60 minutes after a meal. During this window, GLUT4 transporters in leg muscle cells migrate to the cell surface and pull glucose from your bloodstream without requiring insulin. The mechanism bypasses your pancreas entirely. 0.10 minutes of walking at a moderate pace during the post-meal glucose peak clears glucose into muscle cells that are burning it for locomotion. The glucose that would have remained elevated for 90 minutes, producing the post-meal drowsiness, the afternoon fog, the energy drop that sends most people toward the coffee machine at 1 p.m., is cleared by muscle contraction rather than masked by a stimulant. The walk treats the glucose problem with glucose disposal. Caffeine hides the symptom while the cause continues running. Caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours. Coffee at 1 p.m. is still producing stimulant and diuretic effects at 7 p.m., when your body should be beginning its transition towards sleep. The post-meal walk replaces the afternoon coffee for anyone who understands what that drowsiness actually is. It is glucose in your blood waiting for disposal. 10 minutes of walking is the disposal mechanism your body was designed to use, and that the seated afternoon eliminated. 1:30 p.m. The nap window. Adenosine has been accumulating since 6 a.m. Every hour of wakefulness adds to the adenosine load in your synaptic clefts. At 1:30 p.m., your system has been awake for 7.5 hours. The adenosine load is substantial. Simultaneously, your circadian system produces a natural afternoon dip in alertness that every culture on Earth has independently recognized and accommodated. Siesta, repose. The natural architecture of the day includes this dip. Your body is not malfunctioning in the afternoon. It is running its program. A 20-minute nap before 2 p.m. clears accumulated adenosine from your synaptic clefts without entering slow-wave sleep. Stage 1 and Stage 2 non-REM sleep is sufficient for adenosine clearance and memory consolidation, without the grogginess that a longer nap produces by entering deep sleep and triggering the full sleep inertia sequence. The 2 p.m. cutoff matters. Napping after 2 clears enough adenosine to reduce sleep pressure at bedtime. Your body arrives at 10 or 11 p.m. without the sleep drive the full adenosine load would have produced. Sleep onset delays. Total sleep duration compresses. The nap is a tool with a specific time window. Inside the window, it enhances the day without cost to the night. Outside it, the night pays for it. 3 to 5 p.m. exercise. Core body temperature peaks between 3 and 5 p.m. Muscle contractile force is highest. Identical muscles produce measurably more force at 4 p.m. than at 8 a.m. Joint flexibility peaks because synovial fluid viscosity is at its daily minimum after a full day of movement and temperature loading. Reaction time is fastest. Pain tolerance is highest. The same exercise intensity feels less effortful in the afternoon because the pain processing threshold shifts with the circadian temperature curve. Injury risk is lowest during this window because the combination of warm muscles, flexible joints, peak neuromuscular coordination, and maximum core temperature produces the most mechanically resilient musculoskeletal state your body achieves in any 24-hour period. Morning exercise is not harmful. The morning walk at 6 a.m. is low intensity and captures the circadian, synovial, and vascular benefits that justify its early timing. High intensity and resistance exercise, where both performance and injury risk are meaningful, aligns with the afternoon temperature peak. For anyone whose schedule requires morning training, the physics still works. The benefits still occur. The afternoon window is optimal, not mandatory. The worst exercise window is the one that does not happen. 4 p.m., the hydration shift. Every milliliter consumed after this hour is on a collision course with the 2 a.m. bladder. Fluid consumed during the day is processed by your kidneys while you are upright and awake. Fluid consumed in the evening accumulates in your tissues during the hours before lying down, and then redistributes centrally after horizontal position is assumed. The gravitational mechanism, fluid that pooled in your legs all day moves centrally when your legs are elevated during sleep. Your kidneys process this redistributed fluid at 2 a.m. Fluid consumed after 4 p.m. adds to that central redistribution volume. Front-loading 70% of your daily fluid intake before this hour means your kidneys handle the bulk during waking hours when the bathroom is accessible. Your overnight kidneys receive a minimal workload. Your bladder enters the night near empty. Thirst after 4 p.m. is addressed with small sips, not eliminated. Dehydration thickens your blood, but large volumes after this hour, the glass of water with dinner, the tea on the sofa, these are the contributions to the 2 a.m. awakening that most people never connect to the evening beverage choices that produce them. 6 p.m. Dinner. Your liver has a clock, and at 6 p.m. that clock is approaching a program shift. Your liver's metabolic orientation moves after dark from glycogen storage toward glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis, and hepatic lipogenesis. The conversion of excess carbohydrate to fat accelerates in the evening hours. The carbohydrate load consumed at 7 a.m. is stored as glycogen. The identical load consumed at 9 p.m. is converted to triglycerides. The food is the same. The metabolic outcome is different because the hepatic clock running the conversion program operates on a schedule that meal timing either aligns with or works against. Dinner before 7 p.m., ideally 3 hours before sleep, allows your digestive process to complete before your body transitions to its overnight fasting and repair programs. Heat. Evening. Salt, cheese, cured meats, condiments, bread. It produces a delayed renal excretion that peaks at 2 to 3 a.m. Sodium triggers overnight water retention, followed by a renal dump that fills your bladder hours after sleep onset. Evening. Sugar produces an insulin spike, followed by a rebound glucose drop that triggers cortisol and additional fluid excretion on the same overnight timeline. Alcohol suppresses vasopressin. Your kidneys lose the hormonal signal that concentrates urine during sleep. Your bladder fills from 2 directions simultaneously. Gravitational redistribution and ADH suppression running at the same time. Your dinner is not just what you eat. It is when and what is hidden inside it that your kidneys will process at 2 a.m. 8 p.m. Screen light and the melatonin window. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus. That morning sunlight synchronized at 6:15 a.m. is now preparing the opposite signal. Melatonin release from your pineal gland begins approximately 2 hours before natural sleep onset. Melatonin does not produce sleep. It signals to every peripheral system that sleep is approaching, initiating the cascade of core temperature reduction, metabolic program switching, and immune activation that sleep requires as its preparation. The melanopsin receptors that morning sunlight activated are the same receptors that respond to blue wavelength light from screens. Sufficient intensity blue light in the evening suppresses melatonin release. Your pineal gland signal, which should begin 2 hours before sleep onset, is delayed. 2 hours of evening screen exposure can shift melatonin onset by 60 to 90 minutes. Your sleep window compresses. The architecture changes. The deep sleep stages that the early part of the night preferentially contains are shortened blue light. Blocking glasses with amber lenses filter the suppressive wavelengths. Night mode on devices reduces blue emission, but typically not sufficiently. The most effective intervention is reducing screen use in the final 90 minutes before bed. A physical book under warm incandescent light. Conversation, the bedtime sequence described below. Activities that do not involve direct short-range illumination at the intensity levels that screens produce. Bedroom temperature between 16 and 19 degrees, 61 to 66 Fahrenheit. Core body temperature must drop approximately 1 degree Celsius for sleep onset to occur. Your hypothalamus triggers peripheral vasodilation in your hands and feet to radiate heat from your core to the environment. A bedroom that is too warm prevents this heat dissipation. Your core temperature cannot drop sufficiently. Sleep onset delays. Socks in bed accelerate the core temperature drop because dilated blood vessels in your feet radiate heat efficiently when your feet are warm inside a cool environment. Cool air on your skin. Warm feet inside the covers. The thermal gradient your hypothalamus requires to complete the temperature drop that sleep initiation demands. 9 p.m. Legs up the wall. The fluid that pooled in your legs all day is about to fill your bladder during sleep, if it is not processed before lying down. 20 minutes with your legs elevated above heart level drains the gravitational fluid centrally while you are still awake. You urinate before bed, processing the fluid while the bathroom is still accessible. The volume that would have woken you at 2 a.m. is already processed, already gone. Compression stockings during the day prevent the initial pooling. Less pooling during the day means less nocturnal redistribution, fewer overnight awakenings. Combining daily walking, compression stockings, and evening leg elevation addresses the mechanism at 3 separate points in the chain rather than waiting for the 2 a.m. consequence and treating it as a sleep problem rather than a fluid management problem. The legs up position is also the evening stretching window. Deliberate timing. Fascia is most compliant in the evening after a full day of temperature accumulation and movement-driven hydration. The stretching that produces the most lasting range of motion change is performed when tissue is warmest and most hydrated, not in the morning when tissue is at its coolest and overnight fluid has been gelling in the fascial layers. 90 seconds of sustained holds on the 3 or 4 tightest areas. Hip flexors shortened from hours at the desk. Hamstrings compressed from the chair. Thoracic spine rounded from screen posture. Stretching in the evening while your legs are elevated captures both fascial remodeling and gravitational fluid processing in a single 20-minute window. 9:30 p.m. The bedtime sequence floss. The interproximal biofilm that accumulated across 24 hours is disrupted before it matures to the pathogenic state that allows bacteria to enter your bloodstream through inflamed gum tissue during the 8 hours of sleep that follow. The oral systemic connection is not theoretical. Bacteria entering circulation through the gingival epithelial barrier during sleep seed arterial plaques and reach distant organs through a pathway that 2 minutes of mechanical disruption prevents. The floss is not dental hygiene. It is vascular protection delivered through the oral barrier. Gargle. 30 seconds of sustained pharyngeal muscle contraction against the fluid load. The pharyngeal branch of your vagus nerve activates parasympathetic shift through a pathway distinct from breathing or pressure techniques. The pharyngeal constrictors that hold your airway open during sleep receive their daily isometric training stimulus. An airway held open by trained muscle is an airway less likely to collapse into the vibration and obstruction that snoring and sleep apnea represent. Hum for 60 seconds. 1 sustained note. Your sinuses resonate. Sinus nitric oxide production increases 15-fold as acoustic vibration pumps nitric oxide-rich air through the ostia into your nasal airway. Your vagus nerve, millimeters from your vibrating vocal cords, receives direct mechanical stimulation. The exhale to inhale ratio locks at 3:1 or 4:1 without counting because your vocal cords enforce it. Your autonomic system shifts parasympathetically through dual vagal input, mechanical and respiratory, running at the same time. Your body enters the state it needs for sleep onset without attempting to relax. The physics produces the relaxation to sleep position. On your left side, the esophageal gastric junction sits above the gastric pool on your left side. Gravity keeps acid in your stomach rather than allowing it to cross the lower esophageal sphincter into your esophagus during the horizontal hours. Your inferior vena cava runs to the right of your spine. Left side sleeping avoids compressing it, maintaining optimal venous return to your heart across the entire overnight period. Nasal breathing during sleep, mouth closed, air entering and exiting through your nose exclusively. Your nasal airway filters, warms and humidifies incoming air. Your nasal mucosa produces nitric oxide that the humming at bedtime amplified. The residual nitric oxide in your nasal passages continues providing mild bronchodilation and pulmonary vasodilation through the first hours of sleep. Mouth breathing bypasses nasal filtration, dries your pharyngeal mucosa, drops your jaw and tongue backward, and narrows the pharyngeal space that gargling just trained your muscles to hold open. Mouth tape, a strip of surgical tape or a purpose-made strip. Holding your lips closed maintains the nasal breathing pattern for people whose mouths fall open after sleep onset. The snoring that mouth breathing initiates is not a sound problem. It is a mechanical problem. The position of your tongue and jaw in a mouth-breathing sleeper narrows the airway that gargling trained your muscles to keep open. The tape maintains what gargling built. The day closes not with an alarm but with a sequence. The water that diluted the clotting risk at 6 a.m. The walk that opened your vessels and set your clock simultaneously. The protein breakfast that fed your muscles when your pancreatic clock was peaked for glucose disposal. The desk breaks that reset what 30 minutes of sitting accumulated before it could compound. The post-meal walk that cleared glucose rather than masking its consequences. The nap that processed adenosine without taking from the night. The hydration shift that protected your bladder before your kidneys received gravitational redistribution. The dinner timed to your liver's program before your hepatic clock switched. The leg elevation that processed fluid while you were still awake. And the bedtime sequence that sealed your oral barrier, trained your airway, activated your vagus nerve, and positioned your body for the sleep the entire day was building toward. Not one intervention timed by preference. Every intervention timed by the physics of your body at that hour. If this video changed how you see your morning water, hit like so winds of thought can bring you more science of the body you inhabit. And comment below. What time did you drink your first glass of water today? And what did you do before it? Your body has been waiting for this sequence. Start tomorrow.